Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Respected viewers, a new episode of Urban Dialogue and your host Nasir Javed. Viewers, almost 50% of the world is living in the cities today. Though in Pakistan it is less than 40% at the moment, but the speed at which our cities are growing, we are pretty sure that in another 10 to 15 years, we would be more than 50% urbanized. As the cities grow, there are certain problems which we never faced before that, and these problems need solutions, and some of the problems we face every day. The program Urban Dialogue has a focus on finding solutions to these problems. In this program, we invite national and international experts and specialists on the various subjects of urbanization and urban issues and talk to them and try to find out as to how we can find a solution to these problems. So, one problem that we face, majority of us at least twice a day, is on the roads. A journey from home to office and office to home that used to take maybe 10 to 15 years some years ago, today takes 20, 30 or even 45 minutes. This is what we call congestion on the roads. This is not a problem unique to our cities, but most cities in the world have faced this problem, and some of the cities have actually found some good solutions to these problems. We are also trying to find various solutions, and we are all witness to that. Today, to discuss the various aspects of this issue and to find a solution from the cities of Pakistan, especially the large cities, we have with us an international urban transport specialist, Mr. Peter Turner. Mr. Peter Turner, I welcome you to this program.
Thank you very much, sir. It's a pleasure to be here.
Mr. Turner is an international urban transport specialist. He is based in Brisbane, but he has worked in more than 12 countries of the world, mostly developing countries in Asia and Pacific, including Pakistan. Today, we will talk to him and discuss the various issues of urban transport that we face in the cities and how he can help us find some workable, practical, doable and real solutions to this problem. So, Mr. Peter, first of all, let's start the discussion with the issue of what we face every day on the streets, that is the congestion on the streets. I used to travel on these streets on the Mall Road, the Jail Road about 2 decades ago, and it was a pleasure driving on these. I would actually stop on some of the traffic signals, but that would not be a problem, and I will reach my office in 10-15 minutes. Today, it has becoming a nightmare in the day traveling on these roads. How do you see this problem of congestion, and why is this congestion on our roads, and is it so on many other countries in the world, and what is it?
Yes, congestion is endemic throughout the world in urban centres.
Endemic means in every city?
It's every city. It's every city. Some cities are able to manage congestion, but manage it to an extent that, yes, congestion exists, but it doesn't make a huge delay to urban transport, to mobility within the city. For those cities that are struggling and congestion becomes a real problem, part of the problem is the rural to urban migration phenomenon that's caused the cities to grow very rapidly, and generally there isn't the road network development that is able to cope with that.
But Mr. Peter, in Lahore and Karachi at least, we have fairly decent road network, and some of the roads are much wider than what we see the roads in London or many other cities have been around the world. And we have been widening these roads almost every year.
Yes.
So it's not just the road network that is there.
You're right. You're right. That's another aspect of it. It's getting the most out of your network. That's what it's all about, and it's about the capacity of your network to cope with, for instance, 10,000 passengers per hour,
right,
or 20,000 passengers per hour.
Okay.
Those cities that are able to maximise the efficiency of their networks,
right,
they do a better job at managing congestion that the cities that can't.
So if we'd like to rephrase what we have said is that whatever the road network in the city that we have, we need to make it more efficient so that it can carry more passengers per hour in various directions.
Correct.
So how do we do that?
Well, there are a number of ways. Fundamentally, private vehicle transport is a low density occupancy, and on average, you'll get 1 or 2 passengers per private vehicle.
Private vehicle means cars.
Cars, private vehicles. For instance, in a bus, you can have 60 to 80 passengers in a bus.
Right.
That's the same as 40 cars. So you've got the choice. Do we put one bus on the road to carry all those
60
passengers, or do we put 40 cars? Now, when you multiply a number of buses, if you have 10, 15, 20 buses, you can end up with 2,000 or 3,000 cars in that corridor versus that. So that's one issue. Another issue that we have in many developing countries and cities is the encroachment on the current road system.
Right.
We may have and I've seen in many cases, we have a 2 or 3 lane or 4 lane road. In some cases, only 1 or 2 lanes that are operating because it's congested with curbside encroachments. That is a major problem.
And these are both kinds of encroachments. I mean, we can see extension of the shops, we see some hawkers, we see some even parked vehicles.
Yes. And a lot of that, you'd need to check the figures, but a lot of that I suspect is people coming in from rural areas to come into the urban area. Generally they're not trained, so they don't get jobs in offices, so they have their business by selling fruits and other items on the side of the road. And my sense of things is that's a large part of the problem. They've come in trying to get a better life, and that's how they do it.
It is just not the transport or the road network, it is the overall issue of the economy and employment as well.
Yes.
That is compounding the congestion on our roads.
Oh yes, very much so. And you've only got to look and see the state of some of the sellers, the vendors, and you know they struggle. So how do we look after them so they can earn a living, and yet have the additional road lanes operational?
So essentially it is also a use of the overall land use in the city, or how we actually manage these hawkers or these fruit sellers or others and provide them adequate space other than the road network that we have, so that they don't create congestion on the roads.
Yes, and that's correct. And I might refer to a mayor in a city in Indonesia who saw this was a problem. So he was able to relocate the street sellers to a dedicated roadway, a side road, and it was turned almost into a market where everybody would come and they would eat and they'd have their cafe and restaurants and what have you. And that worked very well. And that gentleman now is the president of Indonesia when he was the mayor of Solo.
I see.
And it's giving the street sellers an opportunity to make a living, and that helps.
So once we, your point, coming back to that issue of putting more buses on the road versus the cars.
Yes.
What do you think is the problem? I mean, the buses are available plenty across the world if you want to purchase. What do you think is the real issue, that why cities in Pakistan and in many other countries can't put adequate public transport or buses on the streets, and why we have so many cars? What is the...
Yes. It's a very interesting question, and there are a number of issues coming out there. Typically when we look at an overseas city where they have a good bus system operating, Generally speaking, they are managed by government.
The buses.
The buses, they are managed by government under government policies and under government practices. There's typically compliance with the rules and regulations. And the general business model is that the government takes the risk that it is most able to deal with.
Okay.
And that's the policy positions, the regulations and all those sorts of things that the government is good at, even maintaining the road. The private operator, the private sector does what it does best. It can own the buses and it can manage the drivers.
Right.
And that is the model that quite often we see in the international arena. Now, when we're looking at developing countries, that is the model that, why can't we do that? So it all comes back to the business model and the capacity of this partner.
This partner means the government.
The government partner, yes. To actually fulfill its role, and the capacity of this partner to actually get the financing and make it happen. We have instances, not in Pakistan but in other countries, where the private sector is not confident that the government can in fact work with them in terms of contracts. So there's a gap there. In Pakistan, if we move to Pakistan now, if the government can establish good policies, have public buy-in that yes, this is what we need, there will be improvements to the mobility of everybody, and we will provide the policies and the plan. We will have a roadmap so that the private sector knows where we're heading.
To go.
Then that's a good start. Then it's a matter of getting the private sector to come on board.
Right.
The problem is when we've got a government that sets the regulations and rules and what have you, and the private sector feels that it's not getting a business return for it, it won't come on board.
But the problem in this model and this business return is that by and large in Pakistan, you know the level of economy and the per capita income and the level of poverty we have, and it is relatively the lower middle and the poor sections of the society which use public transport, because for the middle class they usually use this motorcycles, and the upper class of course has the cars. Now this lower middle and poor people actually can't afford a fare which the transporters can make money on. So with the result that they try to use old buses,
yes,
which are non-AC, and they try to have maximum passengers, lower quality standards that we
yes,
can call. How do we deal with this issue?
Okay. Many cities around the world deal with it from a social responsibility concept, yes, in their annual budgets, and it's called subsidy.
Subsidy given to the transport.
Given to the transporters. But in return for the subsidy, there is a strict compliance with contract conditions. And generally speaking, the contract conditions aim to do one thing: put the interests of the passenger first, so the passenger has a quality service.
Okay.
Now, when the government is paying subsidy to operators, it is in the government's interest to have policies that help generate additional demand.
Additional demand of passengers for the
buses, yes, for the buses, because the private sector, all they can do is run on authorised routes.
Of course.
If the government in its policies and management practices is able to, first of all, manage the existing traffic condition so that the buses can operate more efficiently and give priority to buses, then passengers waiting in traffic, and I've been in this situation, you're waiting in traffic and suddenly the bus goes past. You think, I should be on that bus. And then you use it. In some cities, what they have is park and ride facilities where the drivers of their cars will go to a dedicated site. They'll park their car
and get onto the bus.
Get on the bus. And the parking is free for the bus users.
I see.
That's park and ride. And we have more than 10,000 of those in Brisbane, 10,000 car parking spaces on the rail and on the BRT.
Interesting.
And that works. But it's one of those things that doesn't come easily.
Takes time.
It takes time. And you need to be confident that when you design it and you provide it, it's secure. So when you park your car there, you know it's going to be in good condition when you come back in the afternoon. Yes. So it's that sort of thing. And other policies, land use development.
But Mr. Peter, I would like to interrupt here, and I would like to discuss a bit more on the first topic of the subsidy that you talked, because this is something we find it very difficult to manage. But first, let me take a break. And once viewers, we come back after the break, we'll talk more about the subsidy issue in the public transport. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about the issue of subsidy for the public transport. So, Mr. Peter, we are subsidizing almost everything in this country. But when we talk of providing subsidy to the buses and also the BRT that we have, there is a lot of criticism on the media as well. Do you think that cities like maybe London or Brisbane or Australian cities or Canadian American cities, do they also need subsidy, because we believe that they have fairly high fare rates in the public transport? So how good or bad are subsidy and really prevalent subsidy is?
Yes. Subsidy in the context of public transport is often seen as a specific issue because it's a cash payment.
Yes.
What a lot of people don't readily appreciate is subsidy is provided to all forms of transport. The road infrastructure that is built from government taxes is in fact a subsidy for the road users.
Everybody is using the road.
Everybody uses the road, and it's just a fact of life. It's just that the money has gone into new road lanes rather than into a business that is running bus services. And on the issue of subsidy, yes, subsidy is paid for a number of sectors, a number of areas within transport. Well, a lot of people don't appreciate that road construction and motorway construction and all those public infrastructure is provided for by government for the benefit of the user. Generally speaking, the registration fees you pay for vehicles do not cover the cost of that infrastructure, let alone the ongoing maintenance. So in effect, that is a subsidy. The discussion on subsidy for public transport is a popular discussion.
In other countries as well.
In other countries as well, the levels of subsidy. And it's a matter of generally the mindset of the residents. For in Brisbane, for instance, where I come from, there is a public commitment that says, yes, we need public transport and we're happy to pay for it.
Okay.
And that's because the government there has consulted with the general public. It has laid out its vision for the future, and it has been able to convince the public that yes, we need travel management processes in place. And it wasn't easy. It took 5, 6, 7 years to do that.
Convince the people.
To convince that, a sustained process. So at the end of the day, we now have a subsidy system. I'm not sure what the figure was, but it's probably somewhere around a 50% cost recovery. The last time I looked in Canberra, our national capital, it was about 23 to 25% cost recovery. So more than 75% of the total costs of buses in Canberra was a subsidy.
And this is true for other cities like London or Singapore, where they have very good public transport system.
Yes.
It is based on subsidy.
It is based on without subsidy, it would not work.
It would not work.
No.
Now, based on your experience around the world, and you have seen many cities in Pakistan, what would you think, how big would be the subsidy compared to the widening of the roads and the infrastructure that we have to build on flyovers? Will it be more than that if we shift to a good public transport system in the city?
My sense of things, I don't have the numbers, but my sense of things, you are better off improving the public transport because a couple of things. One, you can get more efficiency out of your existing road network.
Right.
You don't have to build additional lanes. And if you start building additional lanes for general traffic, all you will do is encourage more traffic.
You build more roads and there are more cars on the roads.
That's right, because everybody, with the increasing wealth in the country, more people want to buy cars. And we have in Sialkot, I think it's a 10% rise per year in private vehicle ownerships. And that percentage rise is increasing. 5 or 8 years ago, it was only 3.5%. So that's becoming worse. And when we look at cities like Manila, who have built many, many lanes of traffic, elevated structures, elevated freeways, the traffic is still horrendous. And really what we need to do is have a mindset change that with the infrastructure we have, let's make it work more efficiently. Just like to raise the issue of Manila in terms of building more lanes, building more road lanes. There's a general mantra that you cannot build your way out of congestion. And this is the city of Manila, Metro Manila, is a prime example of that. They've built many elevated expressways, and yet they are still choked, congested during the peak hours. So what it does often is just encourage more vehicles to be purchased. The critical thing there is to help manage the driving preferences or the travel preferences of the passengers, on whether they're in private cars or in public transport. I mentioned before the concept of park and ride. That is one where we influence, you drive to a local station and then catch the bus in. So in terms of additional infrastructure, just building more lanes is not the solution.
Not a solution.
It'll just cost you more and more and more. The other thing too is that with subsidy, by providing subsidy to operators as the new business model, what that does is guarantees a quality service.
Right.
The quality service then helps to encourage passenger growth. More business.
And more business means more money for him.
More money for him, more business, money for him, less congestion. So there are a number of benefits there that needs to happen.
Subsidy.
And government can make policies that basically say, yes, this is what we're going to do to help grow the business. This is what successful systems around the world do. And we talk about smart cities.
Yes.
And they are the smart cities doing that. And the smart cities is all about the mindset, not just the infrastructure. And smart cities are driven by the mindset. They use the infrastructure as the tools for making it happen.
Mr. Peter, we are also trying to get into that, making our cities smart. And one of the moves that we did is building the BRT lanes in Lahore, Islamabad, Rawalpindi, and Karachi, and other cities. Yes. But we'll talk about that BRT once we come back from the break. For the break, Peter, we were talking about having these BRT lines in Lahore, Karachi, and other cities. What we have seen that in Lahore and Islamabad, now there are 2 functional BRT lines we have. Although we have reduced congestion on the corridors where the BRT is running, and it's providing a fairly decent public transport to more than 100 to 150,000 per day. But in the overall city, there is still congestion on the roads where there is no BRT. So how do you think successful this BRT is, and what else can we do to make it more successful?
Yes, that's an interesting question. We talk about 100 to 150, 200,000 passengers per day on the BRT. If we think for a moment that that represents 100 to 120,000 cars, if you can imagine that those cars were on the road, the difference it would make. So at the end of the day, we are better for that corridor. From the point of view of the city as a whole, BRT systems and public transport systems need to have a network, the concept of the network.
Citywide network.
A citywide network. And where, in terms of, say, a BRT system, where buses can go from one corridor to the other to satisfy demand, because not everybody is going to go from this end of the corridor to that. They might want to go from here over to there. So that's the concept of modern BRT systems, where you have multiple routes. In addition to that, there needs to be the policy of minimising travel, minimising vehicle travel in certain areas of the city where substantial congestion occurs and where there is a viable alternative, i.e. the BRT. If the BRT serves the city centre, and it's a comprehensive network, at some stage in the future the city government can say, okay, no cars in the city centre.
Right, only public transport.
And we will provide park and ride sites outside, so you don't need, you have a viable alternative. Only when you get to that paradigm there can you really see changes, material changes.
Right.
But that takes a long time.
Of course.
In Brisbane, we have a situation where parking and access to the city centre is generally made so difficult and so expensive. It's just so much easier to park your car at the periphery, catch the bus or the train. And that's the mindset.
That needs to be.
So it's an educational mindset too that the government will need to bring and impart into the community so they can understand. Because generally, if you don't let the public know what you're trying to do, it's also confusing and they won't be able to, they won't understand.
They won't understand and they won't act upon that.
Correct.
But one thing that I wanted to ask was, when I was a child, I would actually walk down to my school. It took me about 10 to 15 minutes walk, but it was a very safe walk. I would go and come back. Now I can't risk my children walking to their schools. Do you think this is a good change that now we have developed more transport? Or?
Yes, I think there's a couple of factors there, and I've had children as well, and part of it is a security issue. But apart from the security issue, there is an increasing number of vehicles, whereas when we were young, we probably had less vehicles. And the other thing too is the quality of the infrastructure.
Infrastructure for the
pedestrians. It's okay to have a pedestrian path along the side of the road, but when I'm working in Pakistan, we often have a traffic policeman with us to actually stop the cars because there is minimal compliance with road rules. So there's a danger there, and it's not only in Pakistan, it's many other cities.
How important is providing this infrastructure for the pedestrians? I mean,
it's
in
vital.
large cities, especially where like Lahore or Karachi, how important it is?
It's vital. It's vital because what it does do is it provides a safer environment for people to walk. Then when you provide off-street car parking, people are prepared to walk 300 metres to the shop they're going to. At the moment, they're not prepared to walk more than 10 metres.
But rather they would like to park their car in front of the shop.
Because the conditions for walking back are so terrible.
But is it the same that applies to this BRT? I mean, where the BRT stops from where to the shopping areas or to the office? That also requires a decent pedestrian infrastructure.
Absolutely, and this is called integrating the system in with the surrounding catchment. because as you round the station, generally 400 to 600 metres,
That is normal walking distance.
normal walking distance, you need to do that because you need to encourage people to walk. And not only is it quality surface, but also lighting at night
Like
for
make it
safety. And in some cases they've had covered walkways. Covered walkways because there are some areas that have a lot of rain.
Heat in this country.
Rain and heat and all that sort of stuff. So it's all about making it better for the passenger, and the more attractive it is, the more passengers you will get, the less subsidy you will have to pay, the less traffic congestion, and the better the overall
and
environment.
More efficient city, and it's
More
better
efficient
economy.
city, with less congestion comes less emissions.
We can improve actually our environment as well.
Yes.
Less number of cars on the roads.
Yes, and we've seen in some cities where due to congestion and emission levels, up to 30% of upper respiratory disease deaths of deaths are caused by upper respiratory ailments. And typically, that is from congestion. And I've stood in those cities and the smell of the diesel is putrid. It's not good. So, you know, that sort of thing needs to help, because with all the sickness, it costs government money for the hospitals.
So subsidizing public transport will reduce our bill for the health sector. That is what you want to say. Interesting.
Absolutely, yes.
Interesting. But Mr. Peter, one issue that I would also like to discuss. We are a country of about 200 million.
Yes.
It's a growing population, one of the fastest growing countries in terms. And we have a kind of youth bulge where there is a lot of unemployment because we have a younger nation and less. Now, there are, say, 200,000 or 50,000 chingchis and rickshaws and minivans and others operating on the roads. And when the government decides on these mega mass transit systems of the BRT and these Orange Line train that we are doing, there is a debate in the social circles that this will create a lot of unemployment. And a lot of chingchis and rickshaws, they are a kind of employment opportunity as well.
Yes.
How do you comment upon that, and how should we address this issue?
That's a significant challenge for government going forward.
Right.
It is a major source of employment, but when you look at it in the context of the next 10, 15 or 20 years, and the congestion in the cities and the competitiveness of the cities, we will find that the cities themselves will fail.
Cities themselves would?
Fail, because no one will want to invest there. It's just
Right.
total congestion. When that happens, we can see that the demand for these services, the chingchis and rickshaws, will decline in the long trips.
Right.
They will still keep the short trips. Right. Okay. So even if we put in mass transit, BRT, in the corridors and key corridors, there is still a role to be paid by the smaller vehicles, whether chingchis or rickshaws, because many of the streets cannot cope with large buses. So if we develop a feeder network using the resources of the chingchi market and the rickshaw market, formalise that, then they can come into the mass transit and provide an integrated system there. And we're looking at that concept in Sahiwal.
Right.
As part of a process of trying to engage them, because it is an important
So what you want to say is that we should design a citywide road network or a network for transport,
Yes.
mobility for the passengers, where we should actually have 4 or 5 or 6 main arteries which should have the mass transit corridors. And while moving into the smaller streets and the offices and the city center,
Yes.
we should actually be using these smaller public transport vehicles, the rickshaws, chingchis,
Yes.
and most importantly perhaps a good pedestrian infrastructure so that they can walk down to their places of work. This is what
Absolutely.
So what we need to think is, if I may rephrase you, we need to think is make a long-term, maybe 20, 25 years business plan, and then design our city transport according to that.
Correct.
Right. We'll discuss another issue, but first let's take a break. Back. So before the break, we have discussed almost many issues, and it looks quite complicated and complex, talking about subsidy, about road infrastructure, pedestrianization, and then health and environment. What do you think is the starting point, and if we want to achieve a good public transport system in cities, where should we start, and what is the fundamental change in our system that you would like us to advise?
Yes, thanks for that. There's an old saying that if you don't know the direction you're going, you can take any road into the future.
And that is perhaps we have been taking.
That's
and
the
changing
problem.
The roads every 5-10 years.
Every 5 or 10 years. So what you need is a plan, a strategy, a roadmap that supports the vision for the city. And the roadmap or the investment package is staged in such a way that first of all it is relevant to the city, it is achievable, and not only is it achievable but it's manageable. So when something is invested, there is the compliance issue. That we need
compliance means enforcement of the traffic rules?
No, I prefer to use the word compliance.
How is it different?
Because compliance implies that the public are willing to support it. We have both the private sector and the government working together. Enforcement is
one-sided,
and it's much more difficult.
It's difficult.
Yes.
We think it is much easier to put the government authority and get things done.
If enforcement was that easy, why do we have so much encroachment? We see in Sahiwal, there's a traffic sign there that parking, no parking, 50 to 1,000, 500 to 1,000 rupee. You look at the base of the thing, there are cars and motorcycles everywhere. So the enforcement is not working.
Right.
And the compliance is not there. There's no sense of community cooperation. It's more cooperation rather than it's cooperation. In Australia, for instance, where we have limited parking, we know that we don't park there.
So what do you think is the fundamental problem in Pakistan or in similar developing countries? Why don't we have, these are all very sensible things that we have discussed and talked. Why don't we have it?
The first one is the plan, the vision and the plan, that is not communicated to the public.
A plan that is not communicated to the public.
The public don't know what you're trying to do. So if they don't know what you're trying to do, how can they comply?
Part of it,
Then there's a consistency that the message has to be out there all the time. We have to stay the course, what I refer to as staying the course. When we have a roadmap, you stay with it. You don't change your mind every 3 or 4 years. Because the public become confused. When the public are confused, they say, this government doesn't know what it's doing, so we are not going to comply. And then the same old problem starts again. Now, it's easy for us in the technical area to say this because we are not in the political area. And this happens in many countries, so it's, it's a challenge. But it's, in many cities that have succeeded in individual projects, and we have what we call project champions. We have one in Brisbane. You would have met Enrico Penalosa from Bogota and Jamie Lerner from Curitiba. They are the ones that sent it all through and made it happen. Just like the Chief Minister here with the Lahore, did it and sent it through and made it happen. And the concept of the political champion is a fundamental requirement for successful projects because they can make it happen. Generally, in developing countries, the capacity of government is limited. The decision-making process, the technical staff members are not prepared to make decisions because, for whatever reason, and that's common across all countries. So you need someone at the top who has the
The
political
authority and
awareness
the political will to get it done.
and the knowledge, the technical knowledge that yes, this is a better option than that.
Than that one.
And then you will get some real results. And you know, it's shown that that's the case. We look at the congestion charging issue in London. The champion there was the Lord Mayor.
Yes.
That's what happens. Now, when we get the municipal corporations coming in the future, if we can get the mayors as the political champion to drive these things forward, then there's a good chance that these will be successful. And you know, I hope that happens because everybody will benefit.
I think we had a very good discussion and a very good insight, but if you allow me to summarize,
Yes.
I would say that we do need first a good political will to change the things, and then we need a good plan, a long-term plan, and keep on that implementing that plan, and a good technical capacity to actually implement all those plans, and a compliance from the community and a partnership with the private sector and the citizens and the commuters, and a focus on the public transport rather than on the private transport, or building more infrastructure. And we hope that in the next 20 to 25 years, our cities could be as public transport friendly or as commuter friendly as many other cities in the developing world that we see. Have I missed anything?
No, you've captured that very well. And if those factors are taken on board, many more cities will be more successful.
Will be more successful.
Yes.
So audience, we saw today that with this kind of long-term planning and a strategy and making things happen with a political will, which fortunately we do have at the moment in Punjab at least that we see, we can actually succeed in making these cities more public transport friendly, more economical, more efficient. With this, we end the program, and thank you, Mr. Peter, for your evening today, and we hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
जनाब ठीक हो गया
हाँ?
इसमें एक गलती हुई हुई है